talk about decentralization and then annihilation. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Litecoin, your coin, blockchain, baby. Mondays at 1600 hours Eastern Studio A.
Deep understanding must arise during these times of unparalleled deceit. A view into the depths of society upon which this country has fallen. A storm brews upon the horizon. It's been said that those that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear will play a paramount role in the furthering of humanity and civilized society. But can civilized society and humanity survive the coming conflicts not seen since a dawn of time in ages bypast? But you can find true forms of information and knowledge in abundance at revolution.radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the globe. Stand upon the right side of history.
General Homer, you've got to get us out of here now! I won't let you down. I won't let you down, son.
Revolution.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Live, and my co-host, Tajinder Gill, coming in from Los Angeles tonight. Welcome, Taj.
Hi, Christine.
Hi there. I'm coming in from London, and my guest, our guest tonight is Adam Curie over there in sunny South Africa.
That's right. Hi, Christine. Hi, Taj.
Hi. So, welcome tonight, and we're going to be talking about visiting other realms, and I just had an interesting session with Sarah in her multidimensional group. It is the second time that we did astral journey and realm walking, which I've done, obviously, astral stuff. I think everybody has, but I hadn't really done any I had done a little bit of realm walking, I suppose, but not to other planets. Well, actually, maybe I had once, but not, in such detail, and it was pretty interesting. I know you were there, Taj, but you don't listen in, do you?
No, I listen in, I just don't take part because I'm the sort of group admin, so I have to monitor the group.
Oh, okay. Oh, you miss out, really. It's interesting, So the other week we went, Adam. The other week we went to what was it? The Temple
Saturn.
of No.
Was it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was a Temple of Time on Saturn. And obviously when she's doing it, you think, oh, well, I'm just lying here. I'm not going to experience anything. But then she helps you get there. And it was so amazing. I literally, gosh, I can't remember what actually happened first. Maybe felt myself spinning through time and space. I think she does it through, first you have to picture a sphere with rainbow light in, and then hook onto your Merkaba and then spin it anti-clockwise, and then I actually can't remember. But anyway, found myself in this temple. And then she said to explore it. And I found all these like weird artifacts there. Like there was the blood of Christ, and there was the stone from Lucifer's crown when he fell. There's all these artifacts. And then I went upstairs and then went outside in like a skylight and had an interaction with a being that I normally, speak to in prayer.
Yeah, you posted in the group your
happened. I was just sharing with Adam.
Yeah.
And then tonight we did a trip to Neptune, and where else was it, Taj? Mars.
Neptune and Mars. I think, yeah.
It was. And it was quite interesting because in Neptune I found myself in water. And of course I've done traveling to the underground using portals. This is really different. And I found myself in like a kind of a cabin kind of tank where I felt like dark, dense energies pulled out of me. And then it kind of crystallized. Then I felt very like purified. And then she took us off to Mars, where she said you probably interact with an oracle. And I interacted with a lady in red who told me that she was me, which was strange. And then she had a kind of black pool in front of her and books around her, which apparently was Akashic Records. And I pulled one out and saw myself when I was old. So this was really fascinating. So what do you think of that, Adam?
Yeah, that is quite interesting. I mean, those kind of travels or the psychic travels or psychedelic travels, entering realms, just if you meditate and you go into these realms, they're very interesting, and you can find out a lot of similar information to the dream space and things like that. But yeah, these are tactics and ways that you can use to travel and go to other realities, sort of trip yourself into, I guess, a parallel reality or something like that, where there's sometimes very useful information. So it's quite interesting. I mean, all of these little trips that people take psychically to the astral, with all the methods that you can use, they're all quite interesting, and there's always a story, similar to a dream that you can sort of extract, and it can be useful in everyday life. So obviously there's a lot of stuff that's come up for you, going to these planets, which I think they're kind of like archetypes as well, planets, and they can all teach you different qualities and things like that. So you get like obviously a liquid. You said something about the liquid planet and the temple.
Yeah, water.
Yeah, Neptune.
Said it was
yeah, that sounds interesting to me. I'm interested in liquid states, but yeah, totally interesting. Similar to decrypting a dream, I guess. I can't really speak too much about what you were experiencing, but it's like me trying to encrypt a dream, but it sounds like there are a lot of factors in there that you could learn from, and you could observe and sort of go, what does that mean to me? How can I put this together as a puzzle?
Yeah, I'm wondering where those places actually are. I mean, I've been there. Sometimes when I go into meditation, I will kind of, lift myself up as high as I can go and then find myself floating out of the earth and then heading to a yellow planet. And then on the yellow planet, which seems like it's on sand, I thought it was Jupiter, maybe it wasn't, and interacting with an entity there who called himself Angel Uriel. Whether it is or not, who knows? But I get some stuff, information there from him. And this is kind of similar, like with those same sort of...
yeah, that's exactly what you can get. You can pick up a name or see an artifact, and it can trigger a name, which can pull up memories for you individually. And those are for my experience in psychic travels, that's exactly what you're looking for, is artifacts, objects, things like this that can that bring up names and things that can connect to the reality that you're already in, so that you've got a sort of pathway between both of them. I've done some travels to, I've got a different models of the universe in my head. So sometimes I use the traditional solar, the planet model. It depends what I'm doing. I've had different experiences, but that is a model that you can use to travel in. It's for sure that it's a model, and you can definitely, I've tried to go to Saturn a couple of times and investigate that box that's supposedly, or the moon Saturn matrix. So I have done that a couple of times. I mean, my mind when I'm doing psychic trips and psychedelics and things like that, it sort of plays around with the model of the universe. So that the traditional one is definitely one that I do use or have slipped into, even accidentally, at times. And, you find very interesting things similar. I relate a lot to the dream time, or the dream space. So you find different notions of what you might find in a dream. And also you can interact with other entities that are living, whether you think it's parallel universe or parallel realities, multi-dimensional realities that are crossing over. You can sort of interact with these things, which it sounds like you did as well. So it's very interesting. All of these things are sort of interrelated. So it's the way that I view it, as sort of a psychic trip. Also going to the astral plane. This all relates to all of this kind of psychic travel, which is mostly of the mind. Sort of you could call it stepping outside of yourself, but some people will imagine it going within yourself. So it depends on how you look at it. It's either going within or sort of having an out-of-the-body experience in a way.
Yeah. I was just wondering about the entities, like, say, Angel Uriel, who looks apparently, who looks to me, I know we can't even see these beings or whatever, it's just what our little eyes and little minds tell us. So I interacted with him this evening as well. And I thought, hang on, I mean, what actually is he, And there was a bit where Sarah said, what's that noise? Sorry, what's that noise?
I'm not sure. It sounds like maybe a scrape against someone's microphone.
Don't worry. So Sarah said about to go, no, I can't remember where it was. I think maybe on Neptune. No, it was on Mars, I think. But there's a place there where you can access ancient memories. So we went up into that, and I got a flick back actually to that Nazi period, which I tend to go back to that again and again that we've discussed. And I was sitting in front of, I had a memory of sitting in front of a load of Nazis, and they had the peak caps, and I was just, they're clearly one of their little experiments. And I was explaining to them that I'd encountered Angel Gabriel, and they said, how did you know it was Angel Gabriel? And I said it was a being who spoke to me. And then seemed to crumble into skeleton and then dust and then sand. And then they said, well, then it wasn't Angel Gabriel. So I said, well, I don't know whether it was or it wasn't. And then I thought to myself, as me thinking now, how do we know what any of these entities are? Like the one who said he was Uriel, how do I know who that is? And how do I know in that particular world, how do we know it's not the world of the jinn? I mean, whatever the world of the jinn means, I mean, how do we know if it's real?
It's very hard to tell. I mean, you have to take it for what it's worth. I mean, I've had experiences with angels as well. These are the angels you're speaking about are actually the archangels. So those are some of the top hierarchy of angels, like Uriel, Gabriel. I've spoken to Raziel a couple of times, but it's very hard to confirm. I mean, how do you confirm if you're speaking to an angel called Raziel or Gabriel or Michael? How do you confirm that it is that specific angel? And the answer is you really can't confirm, but you can take in the information. And if that's the name that they're coming forward with, then you have to sort of trust that it could be who they say they are. I mean, I've also had doubts as to could it be someone like an imposter spirit, sort of something like that. That's something that, you should think that too. You should question everything. So you shouldn't just take everything, but you should also have a little bit of faith. So it's probably side with until it proves itself to be demonic or deceptful in any way. You should sort of fall in the line of, okay, I'll have faith in that name and in who you say you are, until there's a reasonable doubt. You should have some doubt because you could get easily led astray, but initially, if that name comes through, you should probably try and trust it a little bit, with a little bit of caution as well.
Yeah, like I was helping a friend, and the friend, actually it was a guide of hers, is how I encountered Uriel, and she's not psychic, so I was like, she was saying he's my spirit guide, and so I was conversing with him and asking, she was saying, will you ask Uriel, da, 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 da. So I was going into a light trance and obviously projecting and connecting on that planet, wherever the hell it was. He told me it was Jupiter. So so I was telling her stuff, and she was like, oh, am I going to get on well, at this new job I've started? So I asked him, he said, yes. And then apparently she said, do I have to watch this other woman that's there? And he said yes. And so then I asked her to ask him questions that I wanted to know, because it's her spirit guide. I saw it as that. And then she gave me a ring the other day. She got the sack from the job. She argued with the woman. Can you ask Uriel? And I was like, well, hang on, I mean, what do literally I know about this? I mean, how do I actually really know it's Uriel? How, I mean, I'd rather not. I said to her, I'd rather not actually, because, you can probably, if you start really soothsaying and just sort of pounding these beings, whatever they are, for like little bits of the minutiae of your life, how is that? I mean, I don't know. It's all very coetting, I suppose. I mean, he does it.
Yeah, it's hard to ask on someone else's behalf as well. I mean, that makes it even more complicated.
Yeah,
and to call the angels also is quite. Usually, these archangels without calling them, they usually make themselves present. Well, in my experience, I haven't really I don't sit around and pray for a specific angel, because that's not as much proof to me as if an angel just appears or says,
whispers angel
its name
appeared.
or something like
that. This angel appeared, and it told me it was. It told me, and we did it together. We meditated like holding hands, and she said, "I want you to speak to my guide, and because you're psychic." So and then I started interacting with it, and eventually, when we did it quite a few times, it told me, I shouldn't call it, but whatever it was, he told me it was called Uriel. So then, she was like, oh, can you help me out? And da, da, da. But then I started to feel uncomfortable, because I thought, this is like soothsaying. Surely if it is Angel Uriel for real, then isn't it like abusive to ask it, am I going to go to the shops to get my Tampax? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what the
it's a bit of trivial questions for such a high. You can't just ask basic questions. That's why I don't waste a lot of their time. Obviously, if you do that, they might not likely to think that you're taking them serious. So
it's just abusive, isn't it? I mean, she said to me, I want you to connect to my guide. And I said, not being horrible to you, but you're just going to ask him, so I would meet up with her, we'd go for a walk, whatever, and she would like get me to speak, and it would be like, "Ah, you bitch, why didn't you know I got the sack and you didn't tell me, bitch, you were going to get the sack, and it's an angelic being, for God's sake, we're probably a lot lower." I don't agree with pounding their asses over our shitty little lives. And she
Yeah,
said,
no, that's
"Well, hang
respectful.
on, it's my business." But I said, "But I'm helping you out here. There's friendship and all." But, I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of a natural kind of respect that you might have
Yeah.
for, you're dealing with these entities, or, especially the higher, they've all got specific jobs. So they're not really that interested in whether you've lost your job, or, trivial matters of humanity are not necessarily something that they deal with. So I don't know whether they would have the answers, but they're there to deal with specific, more important details than you might find in an everyday
Yes,
life,
yes, it's more
which is
important
why they probably
details.
appear to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my friend is she's had past lives as, powerful people, and I'm sure she's important. But and I do understand, and I'm helping her out by, doing that. But I don't agree with asking them stuff like that. And she's like, "Well, I do." And I felt, well, I don't. So I'm not going to do it for you. Sorry about that. That's a friendship hits the deck. But, I just don't agree with asking, it's because it's working with angels. And at the end of the day, if you start working with angels, I mean, I might throw in that I want house, but I'm not going to start saying, "Oh, I'm meeting such and such, how will the meeting go?" Because that seems to me to be like you're fucking them over. I mean, is that wrong?
Yeah. No, that sounds very wise of you. I mean, this is what, in my experience, it's very hard to get knowledge, what we would call like everyday knowledge, from some of the angels, because they deal a lot in wisdom. So they give you
Yes,
information in forms of
yes,
wisdom. So they're not going
yes,
to just open a
yes,
book and start reading out knowledge. So they'll
exactly.
give you very wise
Yes,
comments, and you have to be dealing in the realm of wisdom to deal with
yes,
them. They're not totally well, they might know exactly what's going on in terms of our timelines and stuff. I'm
yes,
sure they do, but
yes,
they're more interested in, I guess, knowledge in the form of wisdom that exists beyond time. In other words, something
yes,
that would be just as true today as it was 1,000 years ago. So
yes,
they speak in terms of
yes,
truth like that doesn't
yes.
sort of evolve.
And it's abusing them, isn't it, to ask them about your life? It's
It's
abusing.
sort of, it's kind of abusing. It's also mistaking their reason and their nature. So
Yes,
it's
yes,
you're not gonna really you'll confuse yourself, not really
yes,
confuse them, but you'll waste a lot of time, and you'll end
yes,
up confusing yourself,
yes,
getting backwards answers and things
yes,
like this,
yes,
because they're looking to give you true wisdom in the form of truth that doesn't evolve, something that might, that's always going to be true. They could say something. They don't like saying things that is true today, but it's not going to be true tomorrow, because they speak very true words that don't change over time. It's
yeah.
it's a constant truth.
Exactly. Yeah, like when I spoke to Shemyaza, and he used terminology like many moons in many moons and for 50,000 moons, and which is like completely oldie worldy. But with that angel Uriel, I mean, he did give me a lot of stuff to give to her, but there were certain times when he would say, "You don't have any faith," and I would like repeat, "He's saying you don't have any faith," and stuff like this, and because she would get angry at me, and if I'm in a position of like really I've raised myself out of my body and I'm connecting with someone like that, I'm like in a quite delicate like place. And if somebody is physically angry with me, that's going to start my little heart beating. And that's, going to make me feel like, you know,
Yeah, it upsets them because they can't get the solid knowledge answer
yeah,
that they want, and you're going to
yeah,
give them more like wise advice,
yeah,
and they want direct knowledge, which is, it's much harder to deal with, because it's very carefully worded in a way that for them, it's always true. So if they don't like to utter something that's just temporarily, so this is why it's hard to understand the nature of truth itself and the way that knowledge works and the way that something could be true today, but over a period of time it could change into something not true, and then you get a constant totality of truth. And they tend to use, they might use that other form of knowledge and memory, but they prefer to be constant, as it's the same in the beginning as it is in the end. And it doesn't, it's a totally different, it's something that it's very hard to do.
And she will like ask and say stuff, I'm suffering at the moment, this is going on, that's going on. But then if you're because I'm the one in the presence of this being, I'm seeing things from their point of view. Like they see the suffering of the world and how it's really bad, and what's going on here at the moment. And it's time to pick up your cross, really. And if you are suffering, that's the way it is. We're at war at the moment. There's a vast spiritual war going on. Things are only going to get worse here. And it's like, so I'm experiencing that, and then she will say something like, "Oh, when am I going to meet a man?" Not exactly that, but when I'm going to meet my soulmate and stuff. And it kind of, because I'm then up there and feeling that, and then she's done the very worldly thing, I feel like I don't want to help her.
Yeah, it's a smaller bubble. It's a very personal natured question, which again is out of, it's not out of their realm, but they're looking to deal with truths and things that affect more than one person, and rather than an individual, a group or the totality.
But so I think he has he has spoken to me about her, but I just feel it. Like enough's enough kind of thing,
Yeah, no, that I understand those kind of people. I mean, those are kind of surface people. We meet them all the time, and it's very hard for them to explain why, they can't have the answers directly from an angel or something like this concerning their everyday problems, or what we would think is quite trivial, but for them at the time is a trauma or a Great Depression. Like why?
Yeah, I know. She's very knowledgeable and very spiritual. It's just she can't connect to them, so she's like using me as and French, it's fine, using me as a conduit. But I'm in a position where I wouldn't, I don't connect up to spirit and ask them things about my life, because I don't agree with doing that, because I just think we're here to learn. We're here to get, slaps and stuff. We're not supposed to just have them.
Exactly. So when you learn something, you can teach it and carry it on, rather than if someone tells you something about your life personally, you can't teach that lesson to someone else, because it's like, okay, yes, you will get. It's not a lesson you can really teach because it's very narrow.
Yeah.
So
thinking like maybe there's a reason why she can't connect to them. Maybe she's not ready to communicate, so that's probably why she's trying to use you, Christine, to connect to them instead.
Oh, why is there a reason? Why can't she? She says it's because her third eye is shut.
Or maybe she's just not ready to connect with those beings, with that energy, so maybe, if she was to do work on clearing herself and doing some work on herself, she would be able to communicate herself with those entities. Don't you think?
Yeah.
I agree with. Right. Like she probably needs to open her own wisdom to understand this, so these entities can make themselves present to her. Because the third party interaction is also, you lose a lot of information. So she's trying to do a third person interaction where you don't go direct.
And I think sometimes she's been angry with them and shouted at me, and to shout at them, and she said, "I'm shouting at Angel Uriel." it's like it doesn't sit well with me,
No, that's not the right. You don't shout at them. I mean, even using a language like that, if you think about it, if you're shouting at the angel, you can't imagine that you're going to get a good response anyway. I mean, a lot of people would pray that these angels would come. And if you're going to sit around and shout, obviously you've got the wrong attitude for dealing with it. And, to understand why they would appear or converse with you in the first place, you can't be in a mood where you're going to be shouting, and that's obviously where she needs to get, is to realize, why would these things appear? Why would they listen? What would get their attention? And what are they interested in, rather than what am I interested in?
Yes, you're right. I mean, I do understand people, suffering and they want to have a good life and stuff like that. But, if we're here and if we're able to speak to them, it's normally, they want to do something with us, and they want us to have gone through a lot of hardships. So we end up knowing what suffering is. I mean, some people they really don't know about, like that BBC reporter, he kept talking to me about Sienna Miller's suffering because she'd been in the newspaper, in the Sun of all places, for being pregnant. And I'm like, mate, that's not suffering. Come on. There's people who are like, have got cancer and they're on morphine and stuff. And you think the penny dropped with me, that he's never suffered. So he thinks something like that is suffering. And I think to myself, well, mate, you're probably going to go through a lot. God is going to rain it down on you so you become a little bit more of a better filmmaker, because right now, you're an ass,
Yeah, no, well, that's basically, it's like there's different kinds of suffering that people go through. So, I mean, suffering, it's hard to understand, first of all, that suffering can be good for you, or trauma could be good for you, but that's not to say that all suffering is actually good for you, or that most people are going to have a spiritual experience while they're suffering. So there are a lot of surface sufferers that won't get any spiritual vibe out of suffering. And then there are some people that would, physically or emotionally suffer, and that would open up a doorway spiritually for them. That's almost like a portal. So it depends on how your interaction with suffering, as to how it can be positive or not, because obviously it's usually a very negative thing, and some people are just suffering in terms of surface level things, but you can have a spiritual trauma or spiritual suffering that can open up a lot of doors for you, but at the time it's sort of like the end of the world event, so it all depends on how you understand suffering, whether you can get sort of a positive while you're in the darkest place that you go to, if you can find some optimistic thing that comes out of it, or find a gem in the dark, which is very hard to do.
I think suffering also makes you change your perspective on things, like life and work and family and things like that. It just makes you think a bit more. Like if you have like something, like a death or some kind of traumatic event in your life, you sort of like maybe change your perspective on life, maybe make work less important, family more important, or those kind of things.
Yeah, no, you can definitely do that. It can change your direction totally, or in some cases it can humble you if you're too confident, or if you're arrogant or something like that. Suffering can humble you a lot. I've been humbled a lot. I used to be overly confident and arrogant a little bit sometimes. Trauma has taught me a little bit of, and patience, things like this. Just looking for, instead of always looking in the brightest places I found a lot of wisdom in the dark, and I guess also helping people that are sort of caught between the twilight of the light and the dark. But humbling, and changing your perspective, like you said, it can do a full 180 to some people if they have a big enough trauma, and also if they interact with the right people during the suffering.
So talking about back to the entities, it's quite hard for us, isn't it, that we can't see the totality of them, and there we are, in the dark dealing with them, and we see them through our eyes, and we don't really know the whole score, whether they're jinn or not, so it's hard for us, isn't it?
It's very difficult, especially when they can appear in different names. This is why you should really go when you're dealing with them. I mean, they sometimes appear visually. They have acoustics, so they can speak to you. But I guess the general thing that you have to trust is your feelings. So they usually come with a feeling attached to them, and you can sort of feel, if you're very sensitive and open to it, you can sort of say, is this a feeling I can trust? Or, is it a feeling I can't trust, regardless of the other senses? And put your feelings out, or
Yes, but Adam, the feelings are going to belie you, because I don't know if you're like me, but if you're seeing a being and it's on a throne, and it's you look at it and you're like kind of blown away, and it's better than this boring shit we're stuck in, like cardboard box, and it's like, whoa, I'm out of the cardboard box and I'm with this being. You can give a shit if it's ugly. I mean, if it's evil, because you don't give a shit. You're so excited to be out of your box and encountering something that isn't like a dog, humans, the human monkey. So it's like, you don't really care if it's evil, because you're never going to have that low vibrational stuff that you have.
Well, I've had a few experiences, believe it or not, where I've been blown away with imagery and visuals. But not all of these. Some things that were. I was so scared at one point with visuals that I had to close my eyes to find out what I could trust, because I was getting shown. This was like during a psychedelic experience that I was having, and sometimes you can get. You have to get in touch with your feelings, but you only know this if you know that you can't always trust your senses. So I knew at that point that I had to get to the core of my feeling or my sense, because I knew that your eyes can play tricks on you, things can come through your ears, so you have to get in touch with that core, and you can be shown all kinds of things that can blow you away, either scare you or blow you away in a way that an angel or God would. So you have to really try and find, like, am I in a trusting state? Does it feel good? And then you can start trusting your eyes and your visions and the acoustic information that's coming in. Otherwise, you sort of do get carried away, and you can quickly jump into believing everything too quickly. Not that you shouldn't believe it, but you should just pause and try and find that feeling where you can really trust something, and then start opening the eyes to the visual experience. Obviously, it's hard to close your eyes, because sometimes this is happening with your eyes closed, but just sort of be aware that, the visual, the acoustics, you should probably take acoustic. The way that I would do it is feeling, like hardcore feeling, then I would go with acoustics, then visual, and then, if you're going to feel taste and smell, work with your senses that way. So you can get an idea of what's being said just after you start trusting, and then you can open up to what's being shown. And it sort of works for me as to trust the psychic energy that comes in, because sometimes it gets straight into one particular sense before the other. So try and get in touch with your heart, and because you can kind of tell if something's feeling good, or trust. Like when you meet a person, you can kind of feel whether you can trust them. If you can remember it, because sometimes it happens so quickly as well. So you can easily.
Well, it's easy for our minds. I always write it down, because if you leave it till the next day, it becomes like your little mind hasn't. I mean, when I was interacting just now with Sarah, and with the realm walking, when I interacted with Uriel, then I was saying to look, what are you here for? And he said, look, let me show you what you are. And he kind of crumbled me to nothing, and then sort of sent a flame in my direction, and then I was nothing, and then I came out of my body as just a kind of wisp. So it's kind of like really weird. I mean, we should learn about this in school, not just be left in that realm sort of figuring it all out, I mean,
it's very hard. Some people might call these angels like associates or characteristics of the planets. So Neptune could be a Uriel, you see. So these could be archetypes depending on which system you follow. but some people would call, like Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, Mars, they would associate these planets with the archangels themselves. So this would be the spirit of, or the chief spirit of the actual body.
Oh, I see. So Uriel, which planet is he corresponding to?
Well, I'm guessing that in your case it's Neptune now. I'm not saying
I
that's...
thought, no, it was Jupiter. No, it was
Oh,
Jupiter
was it
where I'd
Jupiter?
encountered him before, but then, no, it wasn't. Where did we go first? Oh, God, I can't remember. So I think we just, I think I just started to see him as I came out of my body, actually. So I think that, I mean, I've written it down, but I can't read it now because it's dark. Yeah, I just started to encounter him, and I was asking him questions about my friend, and he just did that to me, so I crumbled, and then I went off somewhere else.
Yeah,
But
that sounds quite humbling, a humbling experience if that's what you felt. Just getting, basically getting taken into, atom-like dust and then, or nothing, and just sort of getting reformed and knowing that you actually come back and sort of experience nothing to everything in an experience.
But they do that a lot in those realms. Whenever I've gone there, they don't like the human form. They don't seem to like the human form. I remember when I went through the portal, the Jinn portal, he said, you can't go like that. You have to go as something different. And he turned me into a bird. It's like, I don't know. They do tend to want to remind us that this flesh isn't real. But I suppose it's not real anyways. It's just a temporary little thing that we jump into.
Yeah, no, that is a very complicated question, because I've often wondered, the shape of these superior entities. They don't we anthropomorphize, I don't know if that's the right word, put them into like a human body, and that's, or they have an avatar that they represent to us, but essentially they live in a reality where they don't really need to have a body, although they can express themselves. They can identify themselves in that world without having the shapes that we need so much with our eyes. So they're the way that they identify each other is sort of a space, I guess, is very complicated for us to understand. Like, how would you understand or see something without a shape, or experience the kind of information that they're exchanging without having, because they've got senses that are beyond ours, like the eyes. We use shapes and sounds. They can transfer the same information beyond our sense, beyond the eye, and beyond getting the information much quicker. So it's very difficult to understand, but it's a very deep, profound question, which is beyond our senses. But it's interesting to think about, how do these entities that don't need a shape, that can be any shape they want to be, or any form they want to be, just to please us, how do they interact with each other, and what kind of magical senses have they got when they don't need all the things that we need? It's very, very, it can blow your mind to think about that.
I suppose we think of them as, because our minds can't handle it, we think of them as a little wisp or something, but it's not really, it's not doing it, is it? Because they're not a wisp. It's a lot of power. They're very powerful.
Yeah, they're sort of like a massive, you could think of them as like a wind or a wisp, and then you could think of, they're sort of, I like to think of them as polarities. So you'd say if they are a wisp, then they're also an entire universe at the same time. So it's like the smallest thing that can be and the biggest thing that can be at the same time. So that they're not really small. They're actually bigger than the opposite of what you're thinking. So if you're thinking of something, they're both the smallest and the largest at the same time, sort of thing. So there'll be like an atom in the universe at once.
I imagine them as a bit of cloud, and it's like, well, no, mind, you're not doing it properly. Yeah, that's a better way to think of them, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, like a micro and a macro. We would probably, you might just catch one. You'll be saying like a micro and a macro. We're not really aware of the macro organisms, but that's sort of what they would be. But they would just sort of sort of like we go onto the internet. That's how they would appear, sort of like, okay, I'm going to give you an avatar. They come into our world similar to how we go onto the internet, and they'll just put on a picture on their avatar and be like, this is how you're going to see me. But we don't really get to go into the big world that's outside, that they're, you know, our world for them is like the internet in a way. So they'll just log in and show you an avatar and give you some information. Obviously, it's a little bit more rich than the internet, but it's like a metaphorical analogy to say how simple or how simplified it is. So they'll sort of log in to our universe with an avatar that they can change in real time and express or show something to you, give you, you know, some kind of information through our universal web. And then I think they log out and they're in two worlds at once. So this is so they sort of can log in and log out, or they can be both in and out at the same time, the same way that we can be, you know, outside and inside the internet at once.
And it's so hard for us to trust. Yeah, you were saying about trusting your senses, because it's almost like we're talking to somebody over the internet. And it's like when you're talking to somebody over the internet, I mean, it could be anybody, because we can't check, you know, anything about them because we don't know how to. So there's that, like, you know, I have a certain amount of lack of trust. Or to some of them. I don't to Yahweh, because I worked with Yahweh and, you know, he helped me at that point. And, you know, so I don't have that with Yahweh. I don't have that with Shem Yaza. He helped me get my car. So I guess when they start doing things for you in a certain way, you know, helping in a big picture way, you kind of do then trust, you know. Trust.
Yeah, you do. Initially, both trust and faith are both similar words. So initially for trust and faith, I mean, some people say they have to earn it. But initially, you sort of, if you're not making them earn it, or you're sort of giving you a lot of things to lead you along, it takes a bit of courage and bravery to say, okay, I'm going to trust something or have faith in something that I don't know anything about, which is sort of a way that I usually go into these things. So it is a little bit dangerous because you don't know. But it does require it requires a little bit of courage to, you know, like go out with a stranger or to meet a stranger. You're in the same boat, and it takes a certain amount of courage. And I guess you also have to hope for the best. You have to have hope with you to say, listen, I'm hoping for the best. So it's like hope, faith, and trust. They are qualities that you can sort of count on, and they are also like qualities of angels. So you can call for hope, and some people would identify hope and faith and these things as angels themselves. So faith is always around and hope is always around. And you have to hope that that's the way that it goes, and that gives you courage and bravery as well. You know, so as long as you can keep those close.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. But that's why I don't like being a third person for my friend, because it's like, you know, what if they tell her stuff to sort of, you know, to test her or you know, then sort of, you know, it's uncomfortable being that person in the middle, you know?
Yeah, it can be some people will, you know, make you use your bravery a lot more than others. Some people make it more comfortable. But, you know, whenever you're in doubt, that's when you have to go to the opposite. It's like doubt and faith. There's like two fishes that swim together, sort of like doubt and faith is like the yin and yang in a way. So you've got to get them balanced. And whenever doubt is telling you things, you've got faith telling you, well, it could go the other way. And then you've got to be brave. And you've also, you know, you don't discount doubt either. I mean, doubt's also there for a reason, to keep you safe. It's that you don't just doubt things for nothing. So you have to open up to doubt and faith, but keep your bravery and hope. Hope is sort of keeping you a little bit towards the light so that you don't get lost in your doubt. You know, so you can just keep doubt as a safety precaution.
I just hope maybe, you know, I mean, Taj, you were saying that she should soon be able to speak to them herself.
I don't know about soon, but what she needs to do is she needs to do the work, you know, to clear herself and to try and connect. I mean, beings are not going to connect with you if you're in like a lower energy, or you're in that sort of that energy where you're angry, or you want to know answers to questions that they're not really interested in answering. You know, so she needs to really, like, maybe, I don't know, really. I mean, Sarah would be better to answer this question than me, but she needs to do a lot of work, energy work on herself to raise her frequency to a point where she can communicate with these beings herself. And when she gets to that point, she won't even want to ask these stupid questions that she's asking, because she'll be in a frequency where she'll be more awake and more aware of who she's communicating with, and she would know not to ask such stupid questions.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's sort of like she would have to invert her polarity so that she would have to ask, how can I be in contact with them rather than how can they answer all my questions? She should want to answer their questions. So being more humble towards them rather than demanding stuff from them, hoping that they might give you something rather than demanding. It's like almost the attitude has to be polarized, where she's coming at it from a more humble. So she has to turn it around and say, can I ask some whys instead of some hows, and just sort of change her attitude as to how, not demanding, what can I do for you rather than what can you do for me? And then you start building, like the same way that you would build a relationship. You wouldn't go into a relationship demanding things immediately to build a relationship. You'd have to say, like, okay, how can I find out what you're interested in, and look more as to what they actually want from her rather than what she wants from them. And then the relationship can start being built, and then you can further that relationship.
Well, she would say, oh, it's my third eye being blocked. But I don't think there's any such thing as that. We've all got the psychic ability, haven't we?
Third eye being blocked is just a kind of terminology that they use in the, like, awake, like the pineal gland. I mean, you don't necessarily need a third eye to do this. That would be more to do, but that's something that people would say, like the pineal's blocked or calcified. It's like a way of saying that. It's just a way, I think, of saying that her connection is blocked. In other words, it's like not necessarily the eye. It's just that she doesn't have a portal open to these beings.
So how would she get that open?
She would have to. This is where to start with trust. So she would have to start to trust and have faith and trust and things like that to build a community. It's the same as, like, if you want to have communication with someone, you'd have to start trusting them and trusting in them, not demanding from them or hoping that they're going to, trying to find out more about them, attracting them, using attraction, like the law of attraction, if you will, sort of wanting them to be interested in what you're doing, and slowly opening up through faith, trust, and hope, and believing that they generally do want to help you, and that you don't have to demand things from them, because they're going to come to you with the right answers. They know what you want to know already, and they're trying to give you the best information. They don't essentially need your questions. They know your questions before you form them. They're just hoping that you can form them yourself, and that builds the connection. So it's like, I often would know that these beings know your questions before you form them, but they want you to form the right questions so that you can have that interaction. Because if you're going to form the wrong questions that lead you to open the wrong portal, it's like dialing the wrong number to call someone. So
I think she's really lucky to have this being interested in her, and it's how I encountered him. I mean, it's a powerful being. I mean, she's lucky. I've told her that. You're really lucky to have that. But she doesn't seem to kind of grasp that. That gratitude.
Yeah, she hasn't really. Maybe she doesn't appreciate it enough, or maybe hasn't gone far enough into the relationship to know how far it could go. It's like if you've met someone wonderful, you haven't gone deep enough into the relationship to know how wonderful it could get, or to
Yeah.
appreciate those qualities of a particular being. And she maybe not aware or hasn't got the trust to think that it can get to that point.
I mean, this 3D, it's very heavy. It's very, we have to earn money. We have to survive. It's getting harder and harder. It does take so much of our attention that the other good stuff, the spirit, seems a little bit like, pink icing. Do you know what I mean? You think, is the pink icing real, or is it just this misery? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the everyday life at the moment, I mean, for a lot of people is very trivial. So, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to get people in touch with what we're talking about. Not very many people are on this sort of quest or frequency or level of energy. They're not really here. They're sort of concerned with their own goals in life and to where they're personally to working towards, or whatever the government or the culture has got a goal for them in general. And it's sort of a very fast-paced reality where you don't even have time to question these things because you feel that they distract you from whatever everything else wants you to do.
Yeah,
And they find that
whoever thought this whatever it is, whoever dreamt it up, they were kind of pretty clever. It's really cut us off from God and anything higher, hasn't it? I mean,
yeah, it's very clear. I mean, the deception's very clever, but it also has sort of the physical. We're talking about the physical deception, really, because most of these things are based on physical. And what we're talking about, we're all sort of together now without bodies. So you're experiencing me without a body, and I'm experiencing you guys without a body. And we're concerned in this kind of information that is non-physical. Whereas a lot of people are concerned with the physical and what can they physically manifest in a physical form. And that is the main distraction. So, I mean, the spirit itself is a non-physical thing. And it's by sidetracking yourself from the physical desires of the world that you can have this non-physical connection, which is obviously a lot of information and memory and knowledge is all non-physical. So if people who are interested in memories and ancient times, and this is all non-physical stuff, and it's very fascinating.
Right,
can draw them
you're
in.
right. Yes, history books and all that, and you guys, I mean, Angel Adam and Angel Taj.
Yeah. So we're all here now without our bodies and sort of communicating.
Oh God, we've ended. Oh, thanks for coming on, you guys. Thanks for co-hosting, Taj.
All right, thanks, guys. See you later, Taj. See you, Chrissy.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, everybody. See you next week.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You're going back in? There's still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, "Hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? You some kind of war junkie?" I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, #1 listener-supported radio, the printing press for freedom at a time when freedom is needed the most.
I am Bill Johnson. Some consider my efforts to be an underground law school. I am not an attorney, and I do not give legal advice. I teach. That's lawful and legal. Consider yourself served. You are to appear Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, Studio A. My forte? Foreclosure and contract law. Grab your legal pad and pen. Learn a broad spectrum of law spanning administrative, criminal,